Did you know there's a family in London who bought the Old War Office, where Britain planned 2 world wars and turned it into one of the most luxurious hotels in the country? Their net worth sits at a whopping £37 billion, but they're just one of the 8 richest families in London that we're exploring today. But before we get into the list, I want you to know one thing. The family at number 1 owns more of London than the king does. Let's begin. Number 8. The Howard de Walden Family. The medical heirs. We start in Marylebone, 92 acres of it to be exact. The Howard de Walden family doesn't get talked about the way some of the others on this list do, and that's precisely how they like it. Their fortune sits somewhere between 4 and 5 billion pounds, built almost entirely on the back of one very specific and lucrative idea. In the late 19th century, they encouraged doctors to set up private practices in the Georgian townhouses of Harley Street. That's it. That one curatorial decision turned a quiet London road into the most famous medical address on the planet. The kind of street where a consultation costs more than most people's monthly rent. And the family has been collecting on that legacy ever since. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. The current head of the dynasty, Peter Chernin, the 11th Baron Howard de Walden, is also an Academy Award-nominated film producer. He co-founded Blueprint Pictures. His credits include 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, and the Banshees of Inisherin. So on any given day, this man might be reviewing a Marylebone development proposal in the morning and taking a call from a Hollywood studio in the afternoon. It's an unusual combination of power, and he wears both hats with apparent ease. The estate also manages Marylebone High Street, a stretch that went from genuinely run-down to one of the most desirable shopping and dining corridors in central London, through decades of deliberate, patient curation. The family's approach has always been to favor independent, character-led businesses over chains, which is why the street feels the way it does. That kind of restraint, commercially speaking, is rarer than it sounds. And when the family recently rewarded themselves for that patience, they paid out a £150 million dividend, split among 55 direct descendants of the 9th Baron. Not bad for a family most people couldn't name in a pub quiz. 1 family down, 7 to go. Let's see how the next one turned a single London street into a global luxury brand. Number 7. The Cadogan Family. The Curators of Chelsea. If you've ever walked down Sloane Street and wondered why it feels almost impossibly polished, every shopfront immaculate, every building proportioned just right, nothing jarring or out of place, there's a very deliberate reason for that. The Cadogan family has owned most of it since the 18th century, and they are deeply, almost obsessively, intentional about what they do with it. Their estate covers 90 acres of Chelsea and Knightsbridge, net worth somewhere around 6 to 7 billion pounds. But the number that matters more than the valuation is the philosophy behind how they operate. The Cadogan estate doesn't sell, it doesn't flip, it curates. They hold the freehold on vast stretches of Chelsea and hand-pick their tenants, actively favoring independent, high-quality retailers over mass market chains. The result is a neighborhood that has maintained its prestige and character across multiple generations of changing tastes and economic cycles. Compare it to neighboring Pimlico, where the great estates were broken up and sold off in the 1950s, and the difference in property values tells the whole story. The 5th Earl was particularly consequential. It was he who replaced decaying Georgian housing across Chelsea in the late 19th century with the red brick terraces that now define the area's visual identity. That architectural legacy is still holding value 150 years later. Their holdings also include Cadogan Hall, a significant cultural venue, and Chelsea Town Hall, meaning the family's footprint extends well beyond retail into the civic fabric of the borough. Their motto, "He who envies is the lesser man," is either the most aristocratic thing you've ever read or genuinely the most grounded. Possibly both. Following the death of the 8th Earl in 2023, the estate passed to his son Edward. The family has paid over £300 million in taxes over the past decade just to sustain the structure of their trusts. Dynastic wealth, it turns out, costs a remarkable amount to maintain. They're also actively diversifying outside London now, building alternative income streams to manage those liabilities. Even at this level, the financial engineering never stops. Chelsea is covered. Now let's move up the map. to a family that turned steel mills into something considerably more interesting. Number 6. The Mittal Family, the Steel Barons of Billionaires Row. Kensington Palace Gardens is a private road, gated at both ends, staffed around the clock, and lined with embassies and residences that represent some of the highest per square meter values anywhere on Earth. And somewhere along it, Lakshmi Mittal owns not one but 3 properties, for himself, his son, and his daughter respectively. The man essentially colonized the street. His own home, 18 to 19 Kensington Palace Gardens, was purchased in 2004 for £70 million, the most expensive residential sale in the world at the time. It's a 12-bedroom mansion, and the marble inside it was sourced from the same quarry used to build the Taj Mahal. Hence the nickname it's carried ever since, the Taj Mittal. Indoor pool, parking for 20 cars, and neighbors who include ambassadors and Saudi royalty. He then purchased number 9 a Palace Green for £117 million for his son Aditya, and a third property on the same road for £70 million for his daughter Venetia. As a property strategy, it's difficult to fault. Control the street, control the postcode. His net worth sits at around £15 billion, built on ArcelorMittal, the second largest steelmaker on the planet, operating across more than 60 countries. But the lifestyle details are where things get genuinely memorable. In 2004, he reportedly spent between 30 and 60 million pounds on Vanessa's wedding in Paris. The venue was the 17th century Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte, booked out in its entirety for the occasion. Adjusted for inflation, the figure touches 66 million pounds. For a wedding, 500 guests, 6 days of events. It remains one of the most expensive private celebrations ever documented. Beyond the residential portfolio, his influence on London's physical landscape is also visible in the ArcelorMittal Orbit, the 115-meter twisting steel sculpture in the Olympic Park, which he co-funded. His super yacht, the Alto, is an 80-meter Ocean Cove build with a stabilized pool table, a cinema, and a helipad. He recently listed it for sale at around $89 million, because at this level, even the assets get rotated. From Billionaires Row to the very ground beneath Mayfair. The next family doesn't just own property in London, they own the pavement it sits on. Number 5. The Grosvenor Family, the Dukes of Mayfair. Here's a fact that reframes everything. In 1677, a man named Sir Thomas Grosvenor married a 12-year-old girl named Mary Davies. Her father had left her something unusual in his will: 500 acres of swampy farmland west of the City of London. That land, over the following 2 centuries, was developed into Mayfair and Belgravia, and the Grosvenor family has owned it ever since. Mary's own life was marked by legal battles and periods of disputed mental competence, a tragic footnote to one of history's most consequential inheritances. Hugh Grosvenor, the 7th Duke of Westminster, is currently 33 years old. His net worth is approximately £10 billion. He is the godson of King Charles III and the godfather to both Prince George and Prince Archie. When he married in June 2024, Prince William attended the ceremony at Chester Cathedral. The press called it the most royal, non-royal wedding of the year, and given the guest list, that wasn't an exaggeration. The Grosvenor estate today is 300 acres of some of the most valuable real estate on Earth: Belgrave Square, Eaton Square, Grosvenor Square. Unlike most developers, the estate operates on a 50-year planning horizon. They take a stewardship view rather than a development view, maintaining strict rules on architecture, tenancy, and the character of their garden squares to ensure the neighborhoods retain their prestige across generations. It is, in many ways, the most patient business model in Britain. They don't need to move quickly. The land has been appreciating since the Georgian era. What makes Hugh genuinely interesting, though, is the contrast between the scale of the inheritance and the way he carries it. He chairs the Westminster Foundation, focused on creating opportunities for vulnerable youth. He maintains a relatively low public profile for someone sitting on £10 billion. The family's historic seat at Eaton Hall in Cheshire covers 11,000 acres. And yet the ground beneath some of the most expensive addresses in the world, quietly, perpetually, belongs to him. Old money at its oldest. But the next family on this list made their fortune in a rather different way, moving through post-Soviet Russia with exceptional timing and even sharper instincts. Number 4. The Reuben brothers, the arbitrageurs of Mayfair. David and Simon Reuben were born in Mumbai to an Iraqi Jewish family and grew up in Islington. In the 1990s, they gained control over roughly half of Russia's aluminium production facilities during the chaos that followed the Soviet collapse. A window of opportunity that opened briefly and closed quickly, and they moved through it with precision. They then exited, redeployed the capital into London real estate, and spent the next 2 decades quietly becoming 2 of the most powerful private financiers in the capital. Their portfolio covers over 7 million square feet of commercial property in the UK Millbank Tower on the Thames. The Burlington Arcade in Mayfair, one of London's oldest and most prestigious shopping galleries, purchased for £300 million. The John Lewis headquarters in Victoria, and 3 entire island blocks in the Shepherd Market area of Mayfair, which include 5 Hertford Street, home to Lulu's, arguably London's most exclusive private members club. The kind of place where the membership list isn't published, and the door policy is a matter of who you are, not what you're willing to pay. They're also transforming Admiralty Arch, the landmark at the foot of the mall connecting Trafalgar Square to Buckingham Palace, into a 5-star hotel with branded residences and a private members club. It's the sort of project that, when complete, will redefine what luxury hospitality looks like in a historic setting. The OWO's closest rival, arguably. What sets the Reubens apart from most players of this scale is their funding model. They don't use outside investors. No third-party limited partners, no fund timelines, no external pressures on returns. They deploy their own equity, take a generational view, and answer to nobody. That kind of financial independence changes what you can build and how long you're willing to wait for it to mature. The brothers are based in Monaco. They don't give interviews. Their super yacht fleet, designed personally by David's wife Deborah, includes the 73.5-meter Siren, with an outdoor cinema and beach club, valued at around $70 million with annual running costs of $7 million. Quietly, methodically, almost invisibly, they've assembled an empire that most Londoners walk past daily without knowing whose it is. 3 spots left. And from here on, the scale shifts considerably. Starting with a family that owns the grocer of choice for the King of England, and the fastest fashion brand on the high street, at the same time. Number 3. The Weston Family. The transatlantic retail kings. The Weston family holds a fortune somewhere between £14.5 and £17.7 billion. And the way they built it is genuinely unlike anyone else on this list. Not through land inheritance, not through post-Soviet arbitrage, but through retail. Specifically through owning both ends of it simultaneously, in a way that shouldn't logically work, but absolutely does. On one end is Fortnum and Mason on Piccadilly, the royal warrant holder, the place where the king's groceries are sourced. A 300-year-old institution, impeccably preserved and taken private by the Westons in 2001. The kind of shop where the tea selection alone occupies an entire floor, and the hampers cost more than a weekend break. On the other end is Primark, one of the biggest fast fashion chains on Earth, operating across Europe and North America, built on the premise that clothing should be cheap, abundant, and disposable. Billions of units, razor-thin margins at scale, the same family, both of them, simultaneously. The brand range is so extreme it's almost conceptual art. The fortune traces back to 1882 in Toronto, where George Weston started a bakery. His son Garfield famously introduced sliced bread to Britain in the 1930s, which, unironically, is one of the more consequential things anyone has ever done for the British public. Today, the family splits between a Canadian branch owning Loblaws, one of Canada's largest supermarket chains, and a British branch running Associated British Foods, which also controls Twinings and British Sugar. Between them, the Westons touch the daily lives of tens of millions of people across 2 continents. But the lifestyle detail that stops people cold is this. The Westons hold the lease on Fort Belvedere in Windsor Great Park, a Gothic revival estate of 59 acres with a swimming pool, tennis court, and 11,000 square feet of rooms steeped in history, including being the precise location where King Edward VIII signed his abdication papers in 1936. The Westons live there now, as neighbors to the royal family. And in 2025, rumors surfaced suggesting the Prince and Princess of Wales might eventually seek to relocate to the fort, which would make the Westons' tenure there one of the more quietly remarkable chapters in modern British social history. In 2025, their net worth rose by over £3 billion in a single year, driven largely by a 40% increase in the value of their Canadian business. The Garfield Weston Foundation, which holds 79.2% of Whittington investments, directs hundreds of millions toward UK charitable causes annually. A dynasty compounding, financially, socially, and culturally, for well over a century. We're down to two. And next up, we're talking about a different tier of ownership entirely. The kind that makes you reconsider what it even means to own a city. Number 2. The Al-Thani Family. The sovereign landlords of London. There is a corner of Northwest Mayfair, running along Park Lane toward Hyde Park, that Londoners and property journalists have quietly started calling Little Doha. Because the Qatari Royal Family, the House of Al-Thani, own approximately a quarter of it. And that's just the residential footprint. Taken together, the Al-Thanis' London portfolio covers around 1.8 million square feet of property. Their private holdings, as a family and through the Qatar Investment Authority, amount to more London real estate than King Charles III holds personally. Not the Crown Estate, which is held in trust for the nation, but the King's own private holdings. The Al-Thanis own more. Let that settle. The individual assets are staggering in scope. They own Harrods, bought in 2010 for £1.5 billion through the QIA, which remains the most famous department store on earth and one of the most visited attractions in London. They own 95% of the Shard, the tallest building in Europe, rising 310 meters above the South Bank as a literal monument to Qatari capital embedded in the city's skyline. They hold a 20% stake in Heathrow Airport, projected to handle over 84 million passengers in 2025. A 14.3% stake in Sainsbury's. Significant positions in both the London Stock Exchange and Barclays. And within their residential portfolio, Cornwall Terrace near Regent's Park. 3 Grade 1 listed homes merged into a single mega-palace, valued at over £200 million. Dudley House at approximately £285 million. Lombard House on Curzon Street at £257 million. They also hold joint ownership of Canary Wharf, the financial district that houses HSBC, Barclays, and most of Britain's major banking infrastructure. Their lifestyle operates at a scale that makes conventional concepts of luxury feel slightly quaint. The Qatari Royal Family has gifted a £500 million Boeing 747 flying palace to Turkey and a £400 million private jet to the United States as diplomatic instruments. These aren't purchases for personal use. They're geopolitical gestures made in the currency of aircraft. What the Al-Thanis represent in London is something that goes beyond accumulated wealth. It's structural presence. When a family controls a flagship department store, the tallest skyscraper, a major airport, a supermarket chain, a financial district, and a quarter of the most expensive neighborhood in the country, they don't just live in the city. They are part of its load-bearing architecture. And then there's number 1. A family whose fortune is the largest ever recorded on the Sunday Times Rich List, who turned a site of British military history into a luxury hotel, and who recently made international headlines for reasons that have nothing to do with any of that. Number 1. The Hinduja Family. Industrial sovereignty and the new Whitehall. £37 billion. That is the Hinduja family's estimated net worth. The largest single fortune ever documented in the history of the Sunday Times Rich List. What's even more amazing is their entire wealth was built across 38 countries, 200,000 employees, and more than a century of deliberate, relentless expansion across industries that don't obviously connect until you see the full picture. The Hinduja Group was founded in Mumbai in 1914 by Parmanand Deepchand Hinduja, initially in textiles and trading. It grew, methodically and without much fanfare, into automotive through Ashok Leyland, into energy through Gulf Oil, into finance through Hinduja Bank, and into IT and healthcare across multiple continents. The diversification isn't accidental. It's a deliberate structural shield, designed so that a downturn in any one sector or region can't meaningfully destabilize the whole. The family moved to London in the late 1970s and spent the following decades building relationships with both Labour and Conservative governments with equal quietly strategic patience, a political ambidexterity that has kept them relevant across every change of administration. Their London residence is a palatial mansion on Carlton House Terrace, a £300 million property overlooking St James's Park, positioned in direct proximity to Buckingham Palace and the operational centre of British government. It's an address that communicates, without needing to say anything, exactly where this family has placed itself within the establishment. But the defining project, the one that genuinely reframes how you think about private wealth intersecting with public history, is the Old War Office on Whitehall, the building from which Churchill coordinated Britain's involvement in the Second World War, where military intelligence was processed, where strategic decisions with global consequences were made behind classified doors. The Hindujas acquired it and transformed it into the Raffles at the OWO, a hotel of exceptional luxury with private residences, restaurants, and a spa, embedded into one of the most historically significant buildings in Britain. The corridors where wartime strategy was once classified now accommodate guests paying extraordinary sums per night. It is historic preservation and ultra-prime development simultaneously. And the execution has been, by most accounts, remarkable. In June 2024, 4 members of the family, Prakash Hinduja, his wife Kamal, their son Ajay, and daughter-in-law Namrata, were handed prison sentences by a Swiss court for the exploitation of domestic staff at their Geneva home. Allegations included confiscated passports, wages of around £7 per day for 18-hour shifts, and reports that the family spent more on their dog than on their servants. The family has appealed the verdict, and the case remains ongoing. But it has become one of the most prominent focal points in the international conversation about extreme wealth, accountability, and the treatment of those who work inside it. A conversation that the scale of fortunes like this one makes increasingly difficult to ignore. The Hindujas are, by almost every quantifiable measure, the most powerful private family operating in London today. The fortune is the largest on record. The flagship project is the most historically resonant. The political reach is the most deeply embedded. And the scrutiny, at this level, is as much a part of the story as the assets. And that's a wrap on the 8 richest families that own, from the ground beneath Mayfair and the King's Grocer to the world's most famous department store and a Hollywood production company. So which one of these dynasties impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And for more such interesting peeks into the lives of the rich, subscribe to Global Status.